Hello and welcome to an Everyday Canines video. In this episode on early takeoff syndrome, I want to talk to you about the question, why are we seeing ETO more often now? It's one of them things where something comes along and you start to see it all the time, people are talking about it, and you think to yourself, how come all these dogs suddenly have early takeoff syndrome? Is it people excusing poor trading? Is it people, giving a label to a dog because it drops poles? What's going on? So, first of all, I think we need to realise that ETO has only been really recognised over the last decade or so. And before then, if a dog was taking poles, it probably would have been said to have been lazy, poorly trained, just a pole knocker. It's only since we've started to really analyse what dogs are doing in terms of jumping style that we've started to appreciate there could be more to this problem than just a dog that doesn't know how to jump properly. And I think the key to this is looking at the fact of video. Over the last decade, we've all taken on devices that can film us. With filming, agility has become much more common. When I started doing agility back in 2009, if I wanted to film my runs, I had to take my camcorder on a tripod and set it all up and do that, and then if I went to shows and wanted someone to film me, I'd have to say, can you use my camcorder, do this, do this, do this. It was cumbersome and more work, and most people did not film their runs. I probably filmed my stuff maybe once a month because of the effort it took to get off. And then of course I had to have, not only did I have to have the camera, but I had to have the software to then be able to process the video afterwards so I could take it apart and edit it. And I had to have the knowledge to do that, and most people don't, and most people didn't. Then we get smartphones, and smartphones can take video really easily. They're easy to edit on the phone or using software that comes with the camera, on the camera phone. And it becomes a lot easier to take video. So people do. Because of this, lots more people were filming their runs, their dogs consistently. And this gave us a big library of video to look at our dogs. Because without that video, most of us would not know if our dog was taking off too early for a jump, and that is why they took a pole. We'd just see the pole go down, we'd be running and go, oh, the pole went, but we wouldn't know the dog took off early. Even now with Sparrow, and I know she has ETO, sometimes the angles, if she takes a pole or something, which thankfully is less common these days, if I'm at the wrong angle, I couldn't tell you where she took off and if that was why she did it. It could be sometimes because I speak to her on the jump, that's another story. So, with this arrival of video, we can now look at dogs, and also photographs as well, but that's less common because we still don't have, we do have photographers at rings, but not everybody's getting their photographs, but certainly with video. We're looking at it and we can slow-mo it and we can see it and we can see what our dog is doing. We can look and say, oh, hang on, our dog takes off too early for that jump, significantly too early. And then we can start filming more regularly and we can say, hey, this is a consistent problem. It's not just a one-off, it's happening over and over again. And I think that's why we're starting to understand and recognise early takeoff. That's one of the components. We're seeing it now. It always was there, but those dogs who had it would have been classified as pole knockers. They'd had all their career going, oh yeah, they're pole knockers, they don't lift their feet up, whatever. Wouldn't have been realised that there was actually something else going on. The other factor is, of course, that we have people who have looked into the problem, not only as saying, well, it's early takeoff syndrome, but have looked into the problem and understand that it is a vision problem. So we've got that element to it, the science behind it, people are investigating it, researching it and seeing what we can do. Other factor we've got to think about is that agility has become more popular and there are more shows available for people to run at, there's more training happening, which means that there's much more opportunity to see early takeoff, not just in a training environment, but in a competition environment. When I began in 2009, it was extremely difficult to find a club that taught agility. And it was, we just didn't have the things available to us to see. Now I can tell you in my local area, I know of several clubs and several independent trainers who you can go to teach you agility. That wasn't there back in those days. So it's more accessible, people are doing it more often. That's when you start to notice things. I think we also need to look at the way the courses are changing. Because back in the day, courses were quite compact. We didn't have the 5 metre, 10 metre rule, so spacings were quite narrow at times. We could have, really small spacings between jumps. And in those situations, the handler could be with the dog constantly all the way around. Now, when you've got small spacing like this and the handler can be with the dog, what that means, the handler can be the guide to the jump for the dog. So when we look at ETO, a lot of the things people say is, if you can be with your dog to get them over the jump, that'll help them enormously. They'll use your body context to know when to take off. So if you're in a situation in the old days where you could be everywhere, ETO would be a very limited problem because you wouldn't see. Because your dog would be using you to tell it how to take over a jump. Once the courses start getting spread out and the dog has got to start doing stuff on its own, then we start seeing these problems crop up, because the handling has not changed significantly in a lot of cases for the bigger courses. The handler is still trying to use their body to guide the dog over the jump rather than having the dog do the jumps independently. And for this reason, the dog has got one eye on the handler, it's trying to take off the jump, it's so far away, it can't really see what it's doing, and it makes a mess of it. So, handling style, the change of handling style from this to the bigger courses, definitely significantly different. We also have to bear in mind that when jumps are tighter, certainly for bigger dogs, you're almost looking at them like a jump grid. If you've got a series of jumps, they're only, well, we used to be a few feet apart, you're effectively having the dog, you're forcing the dog to jump correctly as a jump grid. Again, eliminating the problem of ETO. So I think we need to look at course design and say there's nothing wrong with the modern course design. I love the fact that we're spreading out, but it is causing us to notice early takeoff syndrome. Another factor I think that we're seeing the change of is that people are becoming more aware of what's happening, but they're not focusing enough on jump start and jump training to get our dog to understand how to jump properly. So they're allowing the dog just to fling itself over a jump, and they're not actually concentrating on saying, how do we teach the dog to do this? So again, when we were on tight courses, it didn't matter. Now we're getting spread out. We actually need to educate our dog on how to jump properly. With understanding and with all these changes, yes, we are seeing early takeoff syndrome more and more. But there's still a lack of understanding of what it is, what causes it. Now, by and large, we think it's an eye problem. However, I think we would be remiss to say that it's only ever an eye problem, because in that regard, we could be missing something important. There could be some dogs with ETO, and it's nothing to do with their eyes. There could be something else going on. And because we should never in life make a completely 100% generalisation, because there's always something that will come up different. We're understanding it. We're understanding the changes and needs, but it's still a bit of a mystery of what's going on. We understand that it could be a genetic condition and that it follows in families, which makes sense because if there's a vision problem that is causing it, then that's being passed through families, so then that's been causing that will cause the issue in successive dogs. But we're still learning. So why do I think early takeoff syndrome is becoming more noticeable and why we're talking about it more? Simply because we understand and recognise it more. It's a bit like anything that becomes like, a bit like luxating patella. It used to be years ago, nobody said about knees in dogs. When I sort of first had a dog, I hadn't heard of luxating patella or anything like that. Now, if you're into these agility forums, we're always hearing about luxating patella. Oh yeah, the dog's got a luxating patella, we need to do this, blah, 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 blah. It's not that we're making excuses, but it is because we're understanding more. And we are looking at the bigger picture and saying, okay, now there is this, we know that there's this situation that if the dog's got an issue with his knees, it's going to be doing this. And we're recognising it. And then once we recognise it, it does seem as though every single dog has got this problem. But that's not the case. Lastly, we do need to understand that sometimes we may be looking at early takeoff syndrome and we may be labelling it for training faults. We may be using it as a label, and we're not doing it because we're lazy trainers or anything like that. We're doing it because we don't want to assume anything about our dogs. We don't want to assume that our dog is just misunderstanding the job or something like that. We want to give the dog the benefit of the doubt. And sometimes actually what we are looking at is a training error. And we're just saying, oh, that's probably early takeoff syndrome, can't do much about that. But actually with some training, it could be a problem. And certainly with baby dogs that take off too soon, most of them will get out of the habit. If they get some decent jump training into them, they'll get out of the habit. Equally, you'll see odd occasions of one-off jump, early takeoff, due to the dog misjudging something or having done something in previous that throws it, such as if they've done a long jump or a spread jump and they suddenly go, and they're not used to it, and they suddenly go, oh, that was a bit scary jump, I better take a bit off earlier for this one. So there are times when the dog does take off early, but it's not early takeoff syndrome. And that can be where the picture gets fuzzy. But it isn't a case that more dogs have it than ever before, or that we're making excuses, but it is generally a fact that we are understanding and appreciating something. So I hope that's made sense to you all, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. And if you have, you might like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And we also now have a Buy Me a Coffee supporter page if you want to come along and support us and see what we're doing. And I hope to see you all again very, very soon.